welcome in everyone to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Thursday, December 12th around here, and we got to start talking about the Bill Belichick news. Bill Belichick is officially the head coach of North Carolina Tar Heels, and I'm as confused as you are. We'll try to break it down as best we can. Obviously, more details will start to come out over the next couple of days, but wanted to get that to start the show. Then we'll get to Army-Navy. Coming up this weekend, one of the few games that is happening this weekend. We'll break that down. Then we'll get to the two bowl games that are going to be happening on Saturday to be looking out for. Then we'll get into a little bit of transfer portal talk. The commitments have started to roll in, particularly around the quarterbacks. We have a couple of the top guys off the board and a couple more that I think are going to be pretty shortly behind here. Then we'll get to CFP superlatives. What's the most important player in the tournament? Kind of under the radar player in the tournament. Who's the best matchup of the first round? Most interesting title matchups. A lot of different things that kind of go into this. And then we'll do my CFP head coach rankings. I'm already rethinking the ones I did for the quarterbacks yesterday. Might as well do the head coaches today and do the same thing with that one. But before we jump in, I do want to remind you all we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and the best way for you all to get your question on the screen, we can have fun back and forth here, is to use that super chat. At the bottom of the chat on the Sports Network page, click that $sign, add any question, comment you like. It'll pop up on the screen and we can have fun back and forth here. Definitely want this to be as interactive as possible, especially with this crazy news that we just got. And we'll start with that. Why don't we? Because Bill Belichick has been hired at UNC for the 2025 season. I don't know. It's going to be really, really fascinating to watch all of this unfold. It's going to be fascinating to see who he has on his staff. I think we know a couple of the people that will likely be coming with him, but there's definitely some ers and ahs that have to be thrown in there because he's coming down from the NFL level, still has some things to learn about the college football level. Obviously has been around it with Steve Belichick being at Washington, having friends all around the place, was at LSU for some time in the last little bit, so has been very active in the college football space since he left the New England Patriots last year. So he's going to understand what he's walking into. He is not walking in blind by any means. He is not walking in confused by any means. It does take a little bit of a change, right? It is going to be a little bit of change. It is going to be a little bit different, and it is going to be a battle to figure out how all of this works, how it all kind of works together, and the experience in college football is a big part of this. One way or the other, when you're getting into this new nightmare that is college football, having your feet set in college football is a huge, important thing. Bill Belichick doesn't quite as much as a lot of other people do, but all that being said, he is Bill Belichick. He is the guy that has won 6 Super Bowls. He is the guy that won 2 as a defensive coordinator for the Giants. He is one of the best football minds that has ever lived. Period. End of story. So it's not like it's a crazy hire. It's just a weird one. There's no doubt about that. So it's going to be interesting to watch all of this unfold. And the big thing here is UNC has not won an ACC title since 1980. They have not been a team that wins championships. That's just not what they do up there at UNC football. What they do is they put quarterbacks into the NFL every now and then with Drake May and Sam Howell. They get to 10 wins every now and then, but they mostly hang out around 8, 7 wins pretty much every year. They don't necessarily set the world on fire. They don't necessarily do anything that really puts a lot of eyes on Chapel Hill. They're trying to change that, obviously. Now you have a coach who has signed on for, I believe, 5 years, $50 million. I saw 3 years, $30 million. Sounds like it's going to be 5 years. It's going to be $50 million. You got to win championships. If you're getting paid $10 million a year at the college football level, you can look around at all of the other people that are getting paid that much. Just about all of them are competing for championships pretty much a year in, year out. So the message has been sent very, very clearly that UNC wants to compete for championships, and they think Bill Belichick is the best chance to get him there. Now, we will talk about all of the craziness around what could happen in a couple of years. Will it be Steve Belichick taking over? Is he the head coach in waiting? That is obviously something that will start to unfold over probably the next couple of days. Throughout the weekend, I feel like we'll have a pretty crystalline structure of what this is going to look like. We'll break it all down on Monday, obviously, once we have a better look of this. But just to give you an idea of what has already happened in this kind of craziness, UNC has really signed on. UNC has said, we're going to do this thing and we're going to do it right. And it sounds like John P. Pryor was the guy that was really kind of spearheading this, the board chair, and it sounds like a lot of different people were in this decision. A lot of cooks in the kitchen in this one, a lot of different people with some different wants. I don't think everyone in that building necessarily wanted Belichick. I think the right people did, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the post post-mortem of that, we'll see what happens with a lot of the different donors and a lot of the different people that have to get on board. Are they all on board with what Bill Belichick is and how he's going to coach this team? But it's going to be fascinating to watch. There's just no two ways about that. It is going to be interesting one way or the other. I believe I said it last time we talked about this, maybe yesterday or 2 days ago when this started to come out. I said this could be one of the greatest moves in UNC football history and UNC sports history. It could also be a disaster. And in 5 years, we could be looking back and saying this is the weirdest hire they have ever made, and we're in a very, very bad place going forward. I don't know which one of those is going to be. If I'm being totally honest, I think I could see it going either way. But a couple of things have already happened with his tenure, and that is only about 12 hours old at this point. And the biggest one is Michael Lombardi, the former NFL executive that had been an assistant under Belichick from 2014 to 2016 with the Patriots. He is going to be the GM for the Tar Heels program going forward. It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of adapts to the new style, because NFL, it is different. It's obviously a professionalized model at the college football level now, but the personalities you have to deal with, the people you have to deal with, from the mothers and the sisters and the cousins and all of those people are going to be involved in the recruiting process. That's just the way college football works. It is a family recruitment. It is no longer you talking to that guy and talking to his agent. That will absolutely be a part of this, but there would definitely be a lot more moving parts in the world of recruiting than there was in the world of NFL draft and free agency and all of that different type of stuff. So it'll be fascinating to see how they attack this. They have said time and again that they very badly want a professional model. Pretty much everyone has a professional model at this point. So that's not necessarily a new thing. That's not necessarily a special thing when it comes to college football. You just have professional people running it. You have an NFL staff essentially running this entire operation. So it's probably the weirdest hire that I've ever seen, if I'm being totally honest. It's going to be fascinating to watch all of this unfold. And the question that I have that still remains for me, they said that they're going to sign into the NIL structure, the revenue sharing structure of saying $20 million pretty much every single year will be allocated to the athletic department. The question is, now it's that $20 million that you absolutely need to keep up with everyone, and then it's the NIL funds. You're going to have that one way or the other if you want to bridge the gap between you and Miami, between you and Florida State, and then eventually between you and Texas and Georgia and all of these elite teams. You're going to need more than that $20 million. You're going to need $20 million and then a couple more million when you do the NIL funds, because that is still going to be a big time part of this. But as for other people that could be joining his staff, Josh McDaniels obviously is one of the few names that comes to mind as possibly being the offensive coordinator for this team. I don't know anything about that. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see who he fills his staff out with, but if history tells us anything, he's probably going to go after Josh McDaniels. He's probably going to get Josh McDaniels to be his offensive coordinator. If I had to imagine, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, but that's obviously one. And then Steve Belichick. We've talked about it in the past couple of days around this. It sounds like he is going to be on the staff in one form or another. It sounds like he will likely be the head coach in waiting in one form or another, whether that is in writing right now or is just understood from behind the scenes. He will be a part of that conversation after Bill Belichick does move on. And he is 72 years old. So how long does he stick around? How long is he willing to keep up with the college football coaching world? That'll be a fascinating thing to watch. But one of the bigger things here that everyone has to keep in mind is Bill Belichick, obviously coming from the NFL level, obviously not necessarily new to is relatively new to the recruiting world and how all that works and how all that breaks down. The reality is a lot of this is kind of the NFL model of things as of right now. A lot of this is sort of transactional. There is still that, college football feel. There is still that getting into a room and having conversations and getting in with the family and doing all that stuff. I don't think Bill Belichick's going to be a huge part of that. I don't think Bill Belichick's going to be the recruiting guy. I think he's going to say, I have my recruiting staff. They handle that part of it. I'm going to be the coach. You deliver me the players. I will make them a championship product. Will that work in terms of a locker room feel? That'll be an interesting conversation. Will it work in terms of getting guys to sign on without really having a relationship with Bill Belichick? Is going to be really fascinating to watch. So it's going to be awesome to watch. Anthony, one of the connections that he does have, he was around it as a kid. His father was actually an assistant at UNC for some time when he was younger, but also, obviously, Steve Belichick is the defensive coordinator at Washington. He's had different run-ins at different times. He coached there way back in the day, so he's been around. He hasn't been around this level of college football and this iteration of college football, at least personally. He's been around it through his son. He's been around it through different assistants that he's had throughout the years, but not necessarily him inside of college football. That has not happened in the modern era. It'll be fascinating to watch what happens here because there is a lot of different things that have to go into this, and there's a lot of different things that the NFL coaches are going to have to do now that they didn't have to do before, that they didn't necessarily want to do before, which is go into living rooms all around the country, fly around to Friday night football games, and do all that type of thing. And it's going to be fascinating to watch this unfold because the reality is, I don't know about you guys, but I can't necessarily picture Bill Belichick going in, flying over to Rabun County, Georgia, and going to a game to watch a quarterback play. I can't necessarily imagine that. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this staff works. Is it really just two staffs that are almost totally separate from each other from the coaching and the recruiting perspective? Will they work together? Will Bill Belichick be a big part of recruiting? Will it be all Steve Belichick because he's setting up to be the head coach? There are about a million questions, is what I'm trying to say here. There are a million different questions about what this is going to be, but the one thing I can say very, very confidently and without any hesitation is the expectations just changed. For UNC football, it's no longer about winning 8 games, sometimes winning 10 games, and having a fun year and having a quarterback that you send off to the NFL. You are competing for championships now. You want to win an ACC championship, and at some point, you want to make that jump to reach a national championship. At one way or the other, it sounds like he is bringing in Michael Lombardi. That is going to be the GM for the team, Anthony. So definitely going to be an interesting thing to watch, right? It's going to be fascinating to see how an NFL GM handles the college football ranks. It is a professionalized model, not quite to the NFL level quite yet. So this is going to be fascinating. There's really no other way to put it. The ACC championship is now your goal. There's no two ways about that. And then at some point you want to compete for those. I would be surprised if Bill Belichick was the head coach by that time, but at some point you want to be set up to compete for national titles. Do they have the ability to bridge the gap? It's going to be fascinating to watch. It's one of the most interesting hires that I've ever seen. It is one of those things that I just don't see it. The way that I see it, I'll put it this way. It feels like a square peg into a round hole. I can't say that it's going to be that. I can't say that Bill Belichick is going to fail because the reality is he's Bill Belichick. He has 6 Super Bowls. He's one of the best head coaches that has ever graced football in general, and he has a lot of those. He has a lot of those moments. He has a lot of Lombardi trophies. It sort of makes sense. I understand where they're coming from at the very least. I wouldn't necessarily bet on it being a huge success, but we'll see what happens. We'll give you updates on Monday as this thing starts to really crystalline. We get a full staff. We get all of the ideas of what this is really going to look like. We'll fully update you on, but as of right now, I got no idea, and I'm going to probably leave it at that for the time being. I have no idea how this is going to work. I have no idea how this is going to unfold, but it's going to be interesting. I'll promise you that. It is going to be interesting. But a couple other coaching things before we get out of here. Rich Rodriguez has been hired as the new head coach of West Virginia, and as you can see, he was already the head coach of West Virginia. He was there from 2001 to 2007. Win 60-26 was a very, very special time around West Virginia. He returns. We'll see what happens there. Did a great job with Jacksonville State this year in the last couple of years. It'll be fascinating to watch that one unfold. Definitely interesting hire here. And then Matt Campbell. He was actually involved in the UNC job for the last couple of weeks. He has signed a deal to stay with Iowa State through the 2032 season. They hold on to a coach that they very badly want to keep in the fray. So huge for them. And those were kind of the benign coaching news. Rich Rodriguez probably should have been a bigger story, but Nick Saban decided to steal a little bit of the spotlight. It's going to be fascinating to watch that unfold. It's one thing that, as of right now, if you were asking me to put my mortgage down, I would say it's not necessarily going to work all that well. I'm not going to necessarily put my mortgage down on Bill Belichick failing. I can promise you that. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. We will update you on Monday when we have a better idea of what all of this is going to look like. But let's take our first break here. And when we come back, let's talk about Army-Navy. We got a huge game going on this weekend, one of my favorite games of the year every single year, and we'll break it down right after this.